So, welcome everyone to this month's tips and tricks session. Today, our topic is going to be: Are your digital marketing efforts working? So, this kind of goes into reporting, analytics, conversions. So, I kind of want to talk about ways that you can start measuring your efforts and then ways to gauge the success of your efforts. So, we're going to start by talking about ways that you can start measuring. But first, I kind of want to talk about a rule of thumb we have here in digital marketing, and that is to make everything trackable. What I mean by that is, if Matt was here, the director, he would say that if you can't track it, don't do it. And that sounds a little extreme, but there is some truth to that. So essentially, if you're doing something like an email campaign, you want to have like a UTM code on links back to your website because you just want to know how successful that campaign was. Is it something you want to repeat again? Is it something that you never want to do again? So that's something that you want to look at doing. If you have submission forms on your website, you want to make sure that once someone clicks that submit button, it takes them to a whole different URL, like a confirmation URL, so that you can track, how many people have visited that specific URL. Similar principle with something as simple as putting up posters around your location. You want to make sure that you have QR codes and the links on those QR codes have UTMs on them. So just essentially make sure there's some sort of way to gauge the success of your campaign. Almost everything you do in regard to digital marketing has something to do, has something that you can put tracking on. So, like in paid advertising with Google Ads, on your website with Google Analytics, there's always a way to keep track of numbers because the numbers, they don't really lie. So let's talk about UTM codes very briefly. This is one of the ways that you can start tracking a campaign. So essentially, if you guys ever heard of a UTM code, it is when you kind of append additional parameters to a URL. Most often, it is a URL that goes to a website. So if you're sending out like an email campaign or even like a brochure and you have a UTM code on that, that kind of tells you, okay, this many people came here from this promotion, or this many people came here from this campaign. If you see here in this image, it says it kind of defines the campaign as summer promo. And this way, if you set it up properly, it can come through in Google Analytics as, hey, this many people came to your website from the summer promo. And it kind of lines it up here in the report. And this image here is one of an example that we have worked on. And this is for a medical center who have posters of their services in their locations. And this kind of tells us that, okay, one person came up to the poster and scanned the QR code link for the family medicine service. And another person came up and scanned it for the gynecology services. So that kind of gives you an idea of how well your campaigns are doing. So this is a pretty good tool to adopt, especially if you're doing email campaigns. So that's something you may want to look into. There are generators online. We do UTM codes a lot. You could do it online. There's certain softwares and websites for you to look at. So if you ever need help with that, that's something that we can always achieve. So let's talk about our next way of tracking our progress, and that is with Google Tag Manager. So some of you guys may be familiar with this. Whenever we set up a website or whatnot, we try and make it customary that we have a Google Tag Manager container for your website. And that's just because it is a super important tool to have, because it kind of just tracks what's going on your website. So let's go a little more in depth with what Google Tag Manager does. So let's see here. So it's essentially a free Google tool that gives you the ability to implement and update your own tags for conversion tracking, for advertising, for user activity, and just a whole bunch of things. Tags can be set up to measure how users are interacting with specific parts of your website. So if you're ever curious about how the average user interacts with your website, if you're curious about, okay, how many people are clicking on this button in the top right-hand side of my website, that's something that Google Tag Manager can kind of achieve. What happens is we essentially set up tags and triggers for an event on your website. So we can say, okay, this many people clicked on this button on your website, or this many people clicked on the contact us button on this page. So it kind of breaks down how the average user interacts with your website, and most of the data can be, or all of the data can be integrated with Google Analytics. It is a little bit of a process, especially with Google Analytics 4, to get your data moved over. It takes a process of creating a tag, waiting 24 hours, and then importing it through Google Analytics, and waiting an additional 24 hours to make sure that that data is coming through properly. But it technically is a 3-day process, but it's maybe 30 minutes of work each day, and the results of that is pretty impressive because you get full breakdowns of reports on whatever you want. Do you want to know about what people are searching for on your website? You could do that. You could put in a tag that captures the search term that someone is typing in on your website, and it's super valuable for people who just want to know what the average user is looking for or what the average user wants. So Google Tag Manager is a very well utilized tool that we use here whenever someone comes to us and says, hey, I just want to know how people are using our website. We always bring up this tool because it's something that we use all the time. So that's something that you should look into if you're just curious about your website. This kind of goes off what I just said. It gives you the ability to set up tags and triggers. You can track page loads and specific URLs. So if you have a confirmation page on your website, like a submission form, we can set up a tag that fires whenever someone has filled in a submission form, because we capture whenever someone has reached that confirmation URL. And it can also be integrated with Google Ads. If you're running a Google Ads campaign, we almost always have a Google Ads conversion linker on your Google Tag Manager, just so that we make sure conversions are firing properly and that the communication between the two Google platforms are kind of working in tandem. So that's kind of what we use it for. So it's pretty decent multi-use tool. You may not think of it as a primary Google tool. It's not in the forefront of your mind like Google Analytics or Google Ads, but it is a very important tool that can be used in tandem with the rest of the platform. So that's something to look at. All right, and one way with measuring on your website again is defining your conversions properly. On platforms like Google Analytics and Google Ads, it allows you to define your conversions. And one thing that we like to stress is that make sure that you're using the right URLs as a conversion. Someone going on your Contact Us page is not a conversion. Someone filling out a form on your Contact Us page, now that's a conversion. Same thing with e-commerce platforms. If you're, if someone goes to a shop and shops around and window shops and does not make a purchase, that is not a conversion. But if someone makes a purchase, that is a conversion. That's why we sort of stress always, have a confirmation URL. So you see the difference here between the Contact Us page and the Contact Us confirmation. I've seen a lot of websites where I'll submit a form and the URL will not change. That's not something that is a best practice, because you want to know when a conversion has happened. There is the option of setting up a Google Tag Manager tag to measure whenever someone has clicked the submit button, but that doesn't take into account like what if someone fills out a form and the email is invalid and they just exit the website. It doesn't take into account things like that. So always make sure that you are tracking the correct URL. So I just want to briefly go through how you can do that. So on Universal Analytics, there's an option to define a goal for your website. So keep in mind that Universal Analytics is going away on July 1st, 2023. But for the next, for the next 10 months or so, this is how you can do it if you're interested. There isn't currently a way in Google Analytics 4 to do this, but that's something that will hopefully come in time. It's still a very new platform. So I'll just kind of walk you through how to set up a conversion goal on Google Analytics. So once you're in your home page, this is the first thing you see when you open Google Analytics. You want to navigate down to the admin section. You want to head over to this right panel here, and third one from the top is goals. So you're going to click on that. And over here, you can define a goal. So you click new goal. You have a whole different bunch of templates to choose from. You could also do a custom one, and you can continue, and you can define your goals. So let's say this is a confirmation page, and you can most of the time it's going to be a destination. You can also set up goals like duration, like if someone spends more than 5 minutes on your website, that's considered a conversion. But the most common conversion to set up is a destination, because that's just the most definitive, essentially. So once you click destination, you can click continue. And for the goal details, this is where you put in the URL. So if you had a confirmation page on your website, you put it in here. If you could choose if you want to do an equals to or like a regular expression or regex, you could do that, but you could also do, most of the time, if you're putting your whole URL in here, you probably want to just put equals to. Sorry, my email's going off here. So this is what I recommend. So if my conversion link was called my website /confirmation, and I click save, that would now read as a conversion. Now, whenever a user gets to this URL, Google Analytics recognizes that as a conversion, and you'll be able to kind of pull that from reports. So it's a pretty valuable tool for you to look at. I think the biggest pitfall with this is that we see a lot of websites have goals set up, but the goals are not super well realized. We have some people setting goals as the contact us page, or we have people setting goals as the as browsing through shop. So you want to make sure that your goals are definitive, because you don't want to skew your numbers. When you skew your numbers, that's it's not accurate, it's misleading. You don't want to do that. So that's one thing for you to look at. And again, just so we're all on the same page, it will be this gear in the bottom left, and just this goals button right here on the far right panel. And that's all you have to do to set up goals on Universal Analytics. Hopefully, I'm really hoping that this is a feature for Google Analytics 4, or I'm hoping that there will be a comparable feature of it, but there isn't one right now, and you'll know once there is, because we'll make it known. So that's how you define your conversions properly. Let me start presenting again. All right, so let's kind of move into Google Analytics 4, and this is kind of where we transition from ways to start measuring to ways to gauge success of your campaign. So this is a super powerful tool. I understand that Google Analytics 4 is new to a lot of people, and the interface may seem a little intimidating. It looks a lot sleeker, it looks a lot cleaner, but this is a really powerful tool if you want to start looking at your data, essentially. So let's kind of go through this, and I'll walk you guys through certain reports on there. So the first report I want to tell you guys about is the traffic acquisition by channels. This is a report we use, in maybe, 75% of our client meetings, or maybe even like 80, 90, I don't know. But you just access this by going to acquisition and traffic acquisition on Google Analytics. And you want to ensure that you're using, most of the time you want to make sure you're using the compare functionality, just so you can see the contrasting data from month on month, or year on year, or week on week even. And this report basically lets you look at your analytics by traffic channels. So I can pull this up on the actual Google Analytics so that you guys can see. So this is Google Analytics 4, as you can see here, pretty nice, pretty sleek. I think it looks really clean. And once you know your way around it, it is actually really fun to use, I will say. So you want to go to your reports. You want to go to acquisition. You want to go to traffic acquisition. So this is basically the holy grail of knowing how people come into your website. There are different traffic channels that are defined here, like organic search, direct, referral, display. This kind of shows you how many people are coming through organically. It shows you how many people are coming in through paid search. It's showing how many people are coming through on emails. And one thing about GA4 is that all of this is predefined for you. On Universal Analytics, you used to be able to, or you are able to define what goes into each traffic channel, but unfortunately, you can't really do that on Google Analytics 4. I'm hoping, once again, it's a new platform. I'm hoping that that functionality kind of comes in soon enough, but that's something that we'll have to kind of wait and see, because I would like Google to implement that, but I don't know if it's going to happen or not. So this kind of paints a picture of where people are coming in from your website. And let's say you're in a situation where you're running a paid search campaign, or you're running a social media campaign. This will be where you go to see how it's performing. You want to go to this section here, and once you're in here, the best thing that you can do is click on the compare feature. So let's do the last 30 days, and let's compare this to the preceding period. So the preceding period would be the 30 days before the first day of a 30-day period that you currently have selected. That's a mouthful, but you know what I mean. So let me click apply. And this kind of tells you a breakdown. So it kind of tells you what's inclining, what's declining. If you're seeing, okay, my direct's declining, what can we do there? Our organic social is increasing. That's a good sign. It means our social media is picking up. Our emails are slowing down. Should we implement more email campaigns? So that's something that you can always look at to kind of gauge success and tell your next steps. It kind of gives you the tools to make informed business decisions. So that's a great way of looking at it. You can not only do previous period, you could do the same period of the last year. If you are a business that is really that really hinges on seasonality, this is a really good report for you to look at. You can look at, okay, how was I doing this summer compared to last summer? How was I doing this fall compared to last fall? That gives you kind of a better picture of how you're doing. So not just that. So with you have last 30 days, you have the year on year. You can also do a custom period. If you're looking, hey, how did this one random week in May do across the years? You could do that too. So that kind of gives you the tools of gauging success. So that is the traffic acquisition report on Google Analytics. You can also access this on Universal Analytics. Let me show you how to do that. It's under, let me go to the home page, so we're all kind of reoriented here. So once you're on the home page, just click on behavior, click on site content, click on all pages. And this kind of gives you a breakdown by pages. But for the traffic report, it would be under acquisition, all traffic, and channels. And this kind of gives you a breakdown of what the channels are. So it's the same channels we're seeing on the previous screen, or organic search, direct, display. The one thing I do like about Universal Analytics, and it's a shame that it's going away, is, like I mentioned, it was the channel grouping feature. So under channel grouping, you can kind of go in here and define, okay, URLs from this link will go into this channel, or this link doesn't really fit in any of my predefined channels. Let me define a brand new channel. And I'm really hoping this comes into Google Analytics 4. I don't see it happening until maybe next year when this is discontinued. So that's something for you to keep an eye on. So that's how you access your traffic acquisition reports on Universal Analytics and GA4. So you have both platforms covered there. So let me present again. All right, so for your next report, let's look at the pages and screens report. On GA4, you kind of access this by going to engagement and pages and screens. And you want to ensure, once again, that you're using the compare feature. And this module in particular doesn't really break it down by channels, but it helps you gauge how your specific pages are performing over time. So if you're curious about a specific page and how that page is doing, this is the perfect tool to do that. So let's kind of navigate over to that. So you do it by going to engagement, pages and screens. So once you're in your Google Analytics platform, you want to go to engagement and hit pages and screens. And once this loads, yep, it gives you a pretty decent idea of your specific pages. For us in this situation, it's giving us the page title, but you can change that to the query string. You can change it to something else that's more discernible to you or more recognizable to you. So let me turn off this compare feature here for a second. So this tells us our highest performing pages. It kind of tells us, okay, our homepage or this particular blog is doing really well. Our homepage is doing phenomenally. This gives us a pretty good idea of that. You can take it one step further by adding a secondary dimension. You can go ahead and click on this button here. And this is where, if you're thinking about, okay, how many people are coming to my homepage through social media? This is kind of the tool for you. You can click on this plus button here and click on channel. If this works properly. You may have to go to traffic source. Yep. So sorry about that. This is being really clunky right now. So you want to click on this. So for your traffic source, you want to click on traffic source. Click on first user default channel grouping. And it kind of tells you, okay, these are the highest performing pages, but these are also the highest performing channels that people are coming in from. So we're seeing here that a lot of our pages are coming in through organic search. So we have these blogs and a lot of people are coming in organically. That shows that, hey, our keyword research is doing phenomenally. And we have, great blogs on our site that capture great search intent. So that is where it's coming from. We're seeing here 900 people came to our homepage directly. So a lot of people are typing in, globalreach.com into the search bar and coming to our website. That's good to know. There's always more information for you to find and look at on this report. So if you're ever curious about something and you want to get to the bottom of a question or a specific reason, this is the report for you. I challenge people when I speak to them to have a question in your mind about your website and how users interact with your website, and go on Google Analytics. And I guarantee you that you will almost always have an answer to that question. If you're wondering, how people interact with a specific page, if you're wondering with how, just anything essentially. And if the answer isn't for you, if the answer is not there for you on Google Analytics, chances are you could implement something through Google Tag Manager that answers that question for you. So that's just something to have in your radar. It's a pretty important tool to know about. So let me go to the next report. I'll just click on the slides down here so that we don't have to go to the full screen thing again. So let's talk about this over here, and this is probably my favorite feature here. This is the custom explorations tab on GA4. So this is essentially, it's called explorations, but what it is essentially a custom reporting feature. You can access this by going to the Explore section on GA4, and from there you can set up reports on pretty much anything that you want. If you're importing in data from Tag Manager, what you can do is you could create reports on that. And if you have UTM codes, you could create reports from that. Going back to this slide over here, this is the product of a custom report on Google Analytics 4. So let me kind of walk you through how to access that. So you want to go to the Explore section on GA4. That isn't as hidden as it was on Universal Analytics. So let's go back to your homepage. So homepage of GA4, if you want to access your reports, all you have to do is click on this Explore button here, and this takes you straight to reports. And there are so many types of reports that you could start with. A personal favorite of mine is the funnel exploration that lets you take a look at, okay, people are on my homepage, where are they going to next, or where are they funneling out to? That's a pretty exciting report. But I think the most valuable one for the garden variety website is to start with a blank report. So once you're in a blank report, the default report it creates for you is a free form report. And this is sort of where you can kind of go crazy with whatever you want. You can take a look at, page views. You can take a look at, bounce rates, whatever you want. So it's a little complicated, a little more complicated than the universal analytics reports, because you have to import dimensions a little bit. But trust me, once you start using the custom reporting feature on here, it's going to feel a lot less clunky and a lot less strange than it was over in Universal Analytics. And we kind of compared it to in a little bit, but it is a lot better to use this feature here, because this is probably my favorite feature of GA4. So, for your dimensions, what you can do is you can import whatever you want. If you're looking at demographics, if you're looking at e-commerce, if you're looking at specific events, you could do a whole bunch of things here. So if you're looking at pages, let's do page path and query string as one, and let's import that. And for metrics, let's look at maybe not bounce rates. That's a boring one. Let's look at something like returning users, right? So I want to know how many returning users are on the pages of our website. So I have a dimension imported and I have a metric imported. The difference between a dimension and a metric is that a metric is pretty much always numeric, or the metric is always what you are measuring. So, if there is an event count or a revenue figure or a number, that is pretty much always going to be in metric. And the dimensions is the label of what you want to measure, essentially. So let's grab this and drag it into our rows. And let's grab this and drag it into our values. So this tells me, okay, so this URL has 256 returning users, and this homepage has 122 returning users. So this is a pretty decent breakdown of what you can do. And this just really scratches the surface of what you can do with the reporting feature. You can create different segments. So if you want to see, okay, how many people are coming in from I don't know, Waco, Texas? How many returning users do we have on our homepage from Waco, Texas? You can do that here on the segment feature. Maybe not as in-depth as Waco, Texas. Maybe you could do Texas, right? Maybe I oversold this a little bit. So that's something you could do. If it's not a table visualization, you could do a donut chart. I've always thought this is called a pie chart, but I guess I was wrong. So you could have breakdowns here. You could do scatter plots if that helps you visualize properly. This really is a lot fancier than what you had on Universal Analytics. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the report feature on Universal Analytics, but I can briefly walk you through that. And it wasn't super great. Essentially, you can create new custom reports, and look, it just looks a lot clunkier. You have to manually add metrics, and then you have to exclude the metrics that you want. It just isn't as great as what you have here. So I'd say if you're looking to do some reporting, if you're looking to do some analysis, if you have all the tools that you need on GA4, I'd say just hop right in here, because you need to learn about this anyway, and you need to configure this anyway. So this is just a very surface level tutorial on how the custom reports feature here works. I would love to just do a deep dive on this, but time is limited for this. So that's a feature there that's available to you. I'd say I encourage you to just go on there and mess around with it and see what you can do. Make a cool report. I bet you that you can find something valuable about your website through this report feature. So, like I said, have a question in mind, come in here and create a report and kind of go ham with it. So let me go back here and share my screen. And essentially, I just want to kind of summarize, we covered a lot of material. I just want to summarize, there is a difference between what we covered today, and that difference is that the first part was talking about tools that you can use to start measuring, and there are tools that you can use to start measuring your success. So to start measuring, you can use things like UTM Codes, Google Tag Manager, conversion tracking, so many more than that, but these are just things that come to mind as a digital marketer. And on the other hand, you have tools to start measuring your success. You have Google Analytics, you have your channel reports, you have your pages and screen reports, you have your custom reports. Also beyond Google Analytics, if you're running paid ads, you have a whole report section on Google Ads. If you have a Google My Business profile, which we covered a few months ago, you have reporting there, and you can kind of look at how people are interacting with your Google My Business profile. So the tools are there essentially, and all you have to do is kind of learn how to grapple with it. I know it seems intimidating to work with these tools at first, but trust me, it is it's a super valuable process for you to learn about your website and your target audience and just the average user on your website. So that's all I'll say is that these tools are there for you, and we encourage you to use them. And there's always the option of us kind of walking you through that and helping you use those tools. So I'd say at this point, I'd love to field any questions. If anyone has any questions about the content I just covered, if anything's unclear, please let me know, and I'm happy to walk you through something or troubleshoot something. That was a long way of just saying questions, please. All right. If nobody has questions, I guess that's all the content we had covered for today. Of course, if you have any questions about this at any time, feel free to reach out to your project manager, and I'm sure they can direct you to the digital marketing team here. So if there are no more questions or clarifications or comments or concerns, then thank you for coming, and thank you for listening in. Now we'll go ahead and stop the recording.